Bill Maher, not exactly somebody who is, waving the traditional American family values flag. He's single. He's, for the most part, a curmudgeon, fairly miserable, as much as he's funny sometimes. He's in no way conservative. He's no way traditional. But Bill Maher, on his show over the weekend, supported Harrison Butker. If you want to understand how insane some people have gotten on this ridiculous faux controversy around Harrison Butker, Bill Maher is calling out his own side for this. I want to play what Bill Maher said on his show because he was spot on when he talked about Harrison Butker and the way that this commencement speech at Benedictine from last weekend has been covered by many in media and has been reacted to by many on the left on social media.
And, some of you, talking to the women here, some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world. Okay, that seems fairly, modern. But I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. I don't see what the big crime is. I really don't. And I think this is part of the problem people have with the left, is that lots of people in this country are like this. Like he's saying, some of you may go on to lead successful careers, but a lot of you are excited about this other way that everybody used to be. And now can't that just be a choice too? And I feel like they feel very put upon, like there's only one way to be a good person, and that's to get an advanced degree from one of those factories like Harvard.
One of those a-hole factories like Harvard. I hadn't thought of them that way, but that's a great way to describe some of these schools, a-hole factories. I mean, that's probably one of the nicest things you could call them. But he's right. You know, the only way some of these people perceive you to be allowed to be successful, male or female, but especially in the, feminist movement, is to basically go to one of these a-hole factories, Bill Maher's words, and serve your corporate overlords properly and, put off things that have brought people joy since the beginning of humankind, like family, relationships, kids, and then wake up one day in your 40s, be absolutely miserable, and then keep furthering the movement on behalf of your corporate overlords and political overlords. And that's what you do. And that's not how most people want to live. And we've seen that and learned that over the last week. Harrison Butker's jersey has sold out. The women's jersey sold out before the men's jersey. On Friday morning, it's a tweet that we put up that went viral. You could not get a Harrison Butker women's jersey in any size. They were all gone. And by the way, got mine on Friday morning. Should be here any day. Mark and I will be doing our we'll be doing our jersey swap here whenever I get my Butker jersey. I haven't worn a jersey in 20 years. I'll wear a Harrison Butker jersey because of what it represents. And when Bill Maher is like, what are we doing, guys? Bill Maher's a devout liberal. I mean, that's who he is. He doesn't apologize for that. He tells you exactly who he is. But when he's looking at his own side saying, guys, what are we doing here? What are we really upset with? A guy who spoke in his capacity as a private citizen and a Catholic at a Catholic college and said, some of you are going to have great careers, but, some of you might also be excited and should be more excited about being a wife and a mother. And we act outraged by it? Oh, man, we can't have that.
How dare you?
Oh, Harrison Butker saying such things. Why? Why is that anything that people find themselves offended by? Especially when it's been pretty consistent with things that Harrison Butker has said during, his time as a public figure. I want to play for you a speech commencement speech that Harrison Butker gave here in the last couple of years. Harrison Butker gave this commencement speech. I'm going to play about 2 minutes of it in Georgia in the last couple of years. This is from 2023, so last year. And listen to what Harrison Butker said, a very similar theme to what he said at Benedictine last weekend.
It is important to use today as an opportunity to take stock of your mission. Our culture is suffering. We all see it. It doesn't matter which political persuasion you sit on or whether you are a person of deep faith or not. anyone with eyes can see that something is off. Studies have shown one of the many negative effects of the pandemic is that a lot of young adults feel a sense of loneliness, anxiety, and depression, despite technology that has connected us more than ever before. It would seem the more connected people are to one another, the more they feel alone. I'm not sure the root of this, but at least I can offer one controversial antidote that I believe will have a lasting impact for generations to come. Get married and start a family. Wow. I will say this is the most important ring I have right here. Having kicked the game-winning field goal in both the AFC Championship and the Super Bowl, I have received a great deal of praise for these successes. They just announced that this Super Bowl was the most watched football game of all time, and yet all of this happiness is temporary. And the truth is, none of these accomplishments mean anything compared to the happiness I have found in my marriage and in starting a family. My confidence as a husband and father, and yes, even as a football player, is rooted in my marriage with my wife, as we leave our mark on future generations by the children we bring into the world. How much greater of a legacy can anyone leave than that? Sadly, we are encouraged to live our lives for ourselves, to move from one thing to another with no long-term commitment, to have loyalty for nothing but ourselves and sacrifice only when it suits our own interests. This loneliness is rooted in the lies being sold about self-dependence and prioritizing our career over important relationships.
That was Harrison Butker at Georgia Tech, his alma mater, last year. More or less the same message, right? Get married, start a family. He points to his wedding ring. He said, this is the most important ring I have. He talks about, winning Super Bowls and how that happiness is temporary. But the happiness around his marriage and his children, that's his legacy. That exceeds anything else he will do in this world. Very similar to what he said at Benedictine. And that speech, by the way, has been uncovered, and of course, it's getting knocked. This is from hercampus.com. I don't know if this is some, wacko lefty she-her website, but the headline reads, Harrison Butker's 2024 grad speech wasn't the first time he said some wild bleep. And it goes on to knock this Georgia Tech speech. Yeah, it's pretty wild to talk about starting a family and, getting married and realizing that any successes you have in your professional life will not be exceeded by the happiness that you have in your personal life. And, we have loyalty for nothing but ourselves these days. That is far too frequent, far too common. All that's true. Everything he said there in that Georgia Tech speech is true. And now people are coming after that speech because Harrison Butker is under the microscope. 913-408-7957. I heard nothing wrong in that 2-minute clip from Georgia Tech last year. That was a completely normal speech and a completely normal message to deliver to young people. And if we had more of that, we'd be much better off societally and also as a country right now. 913-408-7957. We'll get to you. Welcome you in 8:15. Happy Monday. It's great to be here on 95.7 FM KCMO and streaming for free on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Oh, man, the stones on this Butker guy. This is what happens, by the way. The media comes after you, and then they start uncovering everything you've ever done or said. So now, over the weekend, what's happened is they're going after Harrison Butker for a speech at Georgia Tech last year where he went to college. He gave the commencement address, and he said some wacky stuff. I mean, just really unbelievable things that are completely out of line, like you should get married and start a family. Woo!
Talk about a bombshell.
Can't be saying things like that. Talked about how we have loyalty to ourselves, but nothing bigger. He talked about how, despite the fact that we weren't connected technologically, the data shows that we are more alone. All those things are true. But that's what now they're going after him for. Last year's Georgia Tech speech, they're basically, here's what they're doing. They're trying to shame him from ever speaking out again. And not just Harrison Butker, it's not just about him. They're trying to shame, silence, and scare anybody who might view the world like Harrison Butker and as a platform like Harrison Butker from speaking out. See what we'll do to you? We'll come after you. We'll uncover everything you've ever said, even though nothing Harrison Butker said last year at Georgia Tech was wrong either. Alex in Overland Park. Hi, Alex. Good morning. You're on KCMO.
Hey, Pete. So I am an expert on this topic because what I do for a living is I work with young families, specifically infants and newborns and parents. And I can tell you there is not a single family, if they were offered more maternity or paternity leave, would they not take it in a heartbeat? Every family wants to have more time with their young children. It's just biological. It's hard to have young kids, too. And if anything else, this completely exposes a complete sector of our society that does not value young children. Because when you talk about it from like the perspective of, the women, nobody's thinking about it from the perspective of the child's well-being. So now you have this child to take care of. So what is the best thing for that child's perspective, right? It is to be attached with secure attachment to caregivers who love them the most. And obviously not everybody has the flexibility in their life or their finances or whatever to stay home for a period of time extended to be with their kids, whether it's the mother or the father or whatever. But I guarantee you, if you ask every parent out there, if you could have one parent stay home with your child and they avoid going to daycare, what would you choose? 100% of them would choose for one of the parents to stay home. And I work with physicians, I work with regular people working regular jobs, engineers, and these are all women, business women, healthcare providers, everybody. And nobody is excited to go back to work. They do it because they do feel a passion for their job, but they also have this new thing in their life that is connecting them like they've never connected before, biologically and psychologically. And it is heartbreaking to see the lack of support for families. And this is exactly why we don't have more leave for our families, because the general society does not value it.
That is very well said, Alex. Excellent points, and we appreciate you sharing them here on KCMO.
Thanks, Pete. Have a good one.
That is great. I mean, she's right. And notice how she said there, I think it's important to note, she wasn't saying that, it's always the mother that may be the one to necessarily stay home. But even if you asked a mother who might be very attached also to her job and maybe the primary breadwinner in any family, that mother would prefer, or that parent would prefer, that the other parent, one of the parents, stay home. That's the point that Alex was making there. That you poll any household, in a perfect world, the preference would be for one parent, not necessarily just the mother, but for one parent to stay home. And she knocked it out of the park on that. Mestina's on KCMO in Kansas City. Hi, Mestina. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Well, I have to say that as a woman, and being a woman that has chosen to be a stay-at-home mom for the last 19 years, I just had a daughter graduate high school on Friday, so
congrats.
I feel a little bit of a successful on that. But I have a bachelor's degree in biology, and I could be in a career anywhere, but I tell you, I have never had anything ever amount to the successfulness or the fullness that I feel knowing that I have raised my children and been there for my children throughout everything and been able to teach them and guide them and help them navigate this awful world, with some kind of dignity. And nobody takes care of your kids like you do. And nobody will love them like you do. So, of course, the best option would be for one of their parents to stay home. I'm not saying either that it has to be the woman, but as a woman, the speech that you just shared of Harrison Butker in Georgia, it almost brought me to tears just to think that there are people and men that do value this woman in a position like myself, because there's not a lot of monetary gain when you're a stay-at-home mom. And so the only reciprocity or the only gain I get is to see my kids successful and to feel appreciated, and for those to notice what I have spent my life doing.
And Miss Dina, that's what makes it the most difficult job, because you don't get a paycheck every 2 weeks that gives you a sense of value in some respects, right? In a society that loves money too much. It doesn't give you, heck, you're right. You want to feel appreciated, but you know as well as I do, our kids are much younger, but there are hours and moments that you feel appreciated, and then 5 minutes later, it's totally different, and you feel completely devalued. And that's what makes it the most difficult job on the planet.
Yeah, there is, the only gain from it is to create a world that your children can be successful in.
Mm-hmm.
And so that it makes it very difficult at times because there isn't that extra paycheck, that extra money. So, I mean, that's almost an extra stress and extra difficulty of the job, per se. So
you sound like you did a great job.
You guys. I really appreciate you guys, and I appreciate the message that you send to everyone, and just thank you for what you do.
Thank you, Miss Dina, and we'll thank Harrison Butker for sparking this conversation over the last, week or so, because he's the one who's making this a national conversation. And you know what? It's a national conversation that I knew at my core we needed to have, but based on the reaction and the blowback to Harrison Butker, I didn't realize how badly this conversation needed to be had. The way that he has been criticized was even, stunning to me. And I'm fairly pessimistic when it comes to the media's approach to people and things and, traditional values and beliefs. But even this one has caught me off guard. 8:34, happy Monday. Great to be here on KCMO 95.7, streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app as, the next layer. And the layers keep coming. It's the story that keeps on giving in many respects. Harrison Butker, his speech from Georgia Tech has now been uncovered. I say that very much tongue-in-cheek because the speech from Georgia Tech, where he went to college last year, is very much on line with a lot of what he said at Benedictine 2 weekends ago. But people are using it to shame him, to try to silence him when he goes out there and says things like, hey, my happiness from the Super Bowl is temporary. He points out his wedding ring during the speech, and he says, this is the most important ring I have. And there's a lot of people going to be bothered by that because your success professionally, according to some, not me, but to some, should exceed and supersede anything else that you do. You should marry your profession, say some of these individuals. That's especially what they tell young women. And there should be no balance. And it's one of the many fallacies that gets pushed in higher education and elsewhere. 913-408-7957. Gene is in Kansas City. Hi, Gene. You're on KCMO.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going well, Gene. What's up, big guy?
Hey, I was just calling because, people were talking about some of the difficulties that new parents experience, balancing being a parent with their professional careers, especially, women as they've ascended into higher status roles as time has gone on. And the main thing I'm thinking about when you guys are talking about this is why is the U.S. I'm pretty sure one of the only countries that doesn't have maternity leave at the federal level. And I'm just saying, some more stringent protections for workers, especially women who get pregnant. I've personally witnessed a lot of discrimination against pregnant women at various jobs that I've worked. I just feel like there should be more protections for them. And that should be a part of the conversation, I know people from Germany and they're talking to me about how there's maternal and paternal leave there and it's months and months and months and it's paid. And I'm not saying we have to go that extreme, but I'm just saying if we really want to help people become new parents and facilitate people starting new families,
here's the thing.
Maternity leave would help?
Well, no. And here's why. Do you know what Germany's birth rate is, Gene?
I mean, all Western countries have a birth rate that's below 2.
Yeah, you're right. So, and Germany's is below the U.S. So if a federal maternity leave was something that would encourage people to have families, it's not happening in places like Germany where their birth rate is 1.58, below the United States of 1.66.
Well, with that, too, I would just say there's a different demographic makeup. And so it's not exactly a one-to-one comparison for that reason. But you're not wrong, definitely. Mm-hmm. But I'm just saying as well, like, I imagine what would their rate be if they didn't have that, though? That's my question to you.
Yeah, but there's no way of knowing that. All we can do is look at what we've got, right? We all we can do is compare what the data is. In the U.S., you're right. And, Gene, it's an interesting point, and I'm glad you brought it up. I appreciate the call. All we can do is look at the numbers that we've got. It is true the U.S. does not have a federal maternity leave policy. Germany does, and their birth rate is still below ours, as are many countries in Europe that do have that paid maternity leave as a federal policy. What should happen, and what I would like to see more of, is that if people in this country truly valued and put family first above all else, suddenly there would be such competition from companies on maternity leave in a best case scenario that suddenly you couldn't get women to work for you if you didn't have a competitive maternity leave policy. And that would hurt your ability to hire people. So that's a situation where I think the market, theoretically, the free market would take care of itself if people said, you know what, listen, I'm going to value my family first and foremost. I want to have a child. I want to have a couple of kids. And you're not going to get the best of the brightest if you don't have a competitive maternity leave policy. You're just not going to get them. And if we put that first and foremost, I think the rest would in large part take care of itself. Now, paternity leave, listen, I think paternity leave for the most part is a joke. I've got a friend who's got 6 months of paternity leave from a major corporation on the East Coast. 6 months. He's like, yeah, this is great. I'm doing yard work. I'm, boozing on the back porch at 3 p.m. Like, it's great. It's fantastic. Like, I admit, I don't get it. That's me. Okay? But the notion, it's kind of like when they say, hey, if we just had universal pre-K, people would have more kids. That's come down from, the Biden administration. They've talked, we need universal pre-K. That's how we're going to encourage people to have babies. There's always like a government answer to why people aren't having kids, per the Democratic Party. And it's just not true. Nothing that they have advocated for has led to more kids. In fact, the birth rate has been in the toilet and has been declining for decades. We haven't been at replacement levels here in the United States in 15 years. That's the last time the U.S. was producing 2.1, which is the replacement rate, births per woman in the U.S. 2007. Since then, it's been downhill. And what's happened over the last 15 years? We've got more big government programs. Hey, we got universal health care. Why didn't that bring about, more babies? That was supposed to save us. We'd all have health insurance through Obamacare. Life would be good. I don't know about you, but my insurance rates keep skyrocketing. I haven't seen any benefit whatsoever from Obamacare being enacted. All it's done is increase the cost in the private sector astronomically. That hasn't done a damn thing to encourage people to have babies. Right? I mean, find me the federal policy in the last generation that has been supplemental and advantageous to people having children. You can't find it. So, there's no way I am buying this idea that if only we had federal policy for maternity leave, people would have more kids. There's not a chance in hell that would happen. 913-408-7957. Frank's on KCMO. What's up, Frank? Good morning.
Hey, Pete, thanks for your covering this. You did a great job last week, and after I listened to you last week, I started thinking, okay, what brings me the most joy? I've been blessed with a successful business beyond my wildest dreams, but the two things that bring me the most joy are the 47 years I've been married to my beautiful wife, 3 children we have, and the 5 grandchildren. And Harrison really, I think, sparked that for a lot of people, and as many loudmouths that there are out there saying to the contrary, a lot of people, I think, are stopping and thinking and taking an assessment, which is a great, good for him in getting that message across, and good for you for doing such a great job of covering this. And by the way, I did read the entire text of his address, and it was very good. I totally disagree with him on a lot of the religious matters, but that doesn't matter. He was at a Catholic school, and he's a Catholic. That's fine. His priorities for family and marriage and life are indisputable. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Pete. I really appreciate you, buddy.
Frank. Listen, thank you, Frank. If one of the things that comes out of this is that there's a silent majority of Americans who reevaluate their priorities, And I'm including myself in that. I'm not, none of us are perfect. When you care about your profession as much as many of us do, you can get bogged down in the day-to-day. I know I do all the time, right? Sometimes I'm putting the kids to bed at night. We got 3 now running around, 5, 3, and a newborn. And I'm thinking about the show the next day. Oh, my goodness, I got to read this. I got to get into that. Like, I get there, and then I get stressed out. Maybe I'm short with the kids. Like, I'm guilty of that as anybody is. But if this Harrison Butker thing has allowed us all to take a step back and reevaluate, and this doesn't mean slack on the job, right? It doesn't mean cut out of work early and, don't care about what you do and what you're paid to do for a living. Harrison Butker is the best in the world at what he does. His message wasn't to be a lazy bum, live off the government, and just, hang out with your kids all day. That's not the message. The message was you can be great at what you do professionally, but still put it in the context in terms of what the most important things are in your life. And that's exactly what he was getting across. And now you've got the Kansas City Star. If you haven't seen this, Kansas City Star had this piece, and here was the headline. You wonder why print media and newspapers are now laughed at and are a mockery and no one reads them. The Kansas City Chiefs should fire Harrison Butker and hire someone who kicks like a girl. That's the article from the Kansas City. They actually printed this. They made the case in the news. Wow, I can't believe why no one's reading newspapers. They made the case in the Kansas City Star for why the Chiefs should fire the best kicker in the NFL and hire a woman to kick. This is not, they are literally fulfilling prophecies of the Babylon Bee. This is satire, but it was not satire. It was written in the Kansas City Star. And I will share with you the most hysterical part of this coming up next on KCMO 95.7 FM. Oh, man, we got a douche alert here. Peter Ham, former journalist and public affairs professional for the nonprofit government agencies and political campaigns, lives in the Washington, D.C. suburbs. He wrote this article to the Kansas City Star, an opinion piece, and the Star actually published this, which makes it even worse. The guy's not even on the payroll where they're like, hey, we need somebody who, is going to write something against Harrison Butker who's on the payroll. We got to make them, earn their paycheck. This is a special to the Star, an opinion piece that the Star actually published, meaning multiple people read this article who were employed by the Kansas City Star and then put this in the newspaper. Can't imagine why newspapers are dying. Headline, the Chiefs should fire Harrison Butker and hire someone who kicks like a girl.
She's a real beauty.
How exhausting. Here's how this article goes on the read. I'm just going to share a little bit of this with you here. For poetic justice after Harrison Butker's Neanderthal outburst. And because the pipeline of talent is real, the Chiefs' next kicker should be a woman. I'm sure Brett Veach has taken this one seriously as he, tries to put together the team next season. How do we go for the three-peat? I know, let's fire the guy who's got the record for Super Bowl field goal length at 57 yards and hire a girl. Let's do that. By the way, the amazing part is up until Harrison Butker's speech, these people couldn't even define a woman. That's what's also amazing to me in all this. All of a sudden, now they're back to being able to define that there are two genders and what a woman is and what a man is. They couldn't do it 2 weeks ago, but now they magically can do this again. It's really impressive when you think about it. Anyway, Ham goes on the right here. This is not a joke. Really? I wish it was. It's not unrealistic, and it would be good for business. Hey.
How does he know that?
I don't know. The Butker jerseys are sold out. And I'm pretty sure when the game's on the line, opening night against the Baltimore Ravens, you'd feel a lot better with Harrison Butker going out to kick the game-winning field goal, which would then lead to potentially more home games in the playoffs for the Kansas City Chiefs, which would be good for business than saying, you know what, we're firing Butker, we're bringing in the girl, and, she's going to kick a sidewinder, miss left and short by about 25 yards. But, hey, at least that guy Butker got his butt canned, right? It's satire, but it's not. That's the scary part of the article.
If there were a female that could nail a 60-yard field goal, she'd be employed.
Well, that's a great point.
Right.
She would be employed.
Absolutely.
So true. All right. He says it's not a joke. It's not unrealistic. It would be good for business. Goes on to say and use some examples here. In 1997, soccer standout Liz Houston kicked 2 extra points for Oregon's Willamette University Bearcats. Wow, kicked an extra point. I might do that, if I get lucky. Ashley Martin broke the NCAA Division I barrier in 2001 as a place kicker for Florida's Jackson State University. Sarah Fuller kicked for Vanderbilt against Missouri back in November of 2020. If you're a Mizzou fan, diehard Mizzou football fan, do you remember that kick by Sarah Fuller for Vanderbilt? It was a kickoff, and it went about 30 yards. It was like a squib kick.
It was a misty Saturday, Pete. The fog came in off of the east end zone. No. Clearly.
Go look it up.
Right.
I found it this morning.
I remember it vaguely.
It was a bad squib kick is what it was.
I remember everybody was excited about her having the chance to kick, and then Vanderbilt couldn't score any points.
Yeah. So they used her on the kickoff, and it went, I don't know, in the air about 25 yards, and then it landed somewhere around the 20-yard line and was picked up by Mizzou. Trust me, that ain't working for the Kansas City Chiefs trying to three-peat as Super Bowl champs. Those are the examples that this guy Peter Ham uses. He goes, and then he uses this other example, Maya Turner from Minnesota, who I guess at one point in the Canadian Football League kicked a 48-yarder. Okay, that's pretty good. But once again, these guys in the NFL are nailing consistently 55+. Not like getting lucky on a 48-yarder. He said the Chiefs need to make a strategic call about Butker's future with the team. If he could agree to shut his mouth, the current story might fade. There are, after all, plenty of athletes with backward cultural views, but they're tolerated if they can mostly stick to sports cliches in interviews. If they're superstars, they sometimes can keep yapping and get away with it. Harrison Butker is not Patrick Mahomes. He's a special teams player. That gives him less leverage with the team. Clearly, this guy doesn't even understand football and the value of having a great kicker. Ask the Buffalo Bills if they would have taken Harrison Butker in that divisional playoff game last year against the Kansas City Chiefs. They've had some issues with their kicking over the last 30 years, by the way, going back to Super Bowls and AFC Championship games. Imagine talking about this like this guy Peter Ham is in the Kansas City Star and not even understanding the sport and the value of a great kicker. Ask Andy Reid the value of a great kicker. It literally changes what you do on a 3rd and 5 from your opponent's 40-yard line. Knowing you have a great kicker changes your play calling during an entire game. And clearly, this guy doesn't even understand that. And the Kansas City Star allowed him to publish this. This is stunning. He says here, Liz Houston, Ashley Martin, Katie Nita, or Sarah Fuller might take the call from the Chiefs. Maya Turner would likely give it serious thought to an offer. And the farm system for talent is rich. There are more than 300 players on 14 teams in the National Women's Soccer League. Yes, because kicking a soccer ball is just like kicking a football. They're one and the same. The ball's, everything about it's one and the same. That's more than 300 women who are professional ball kickers. I think Peter Ham needs a professional ball kicker in his life. He needs a nice kick in the ball. That's what he needs.
Well, there's a few more amateur ball kickers out there too, Pete.
How many of us are married to an amateur ball kicker? I'm just saying.
Okay? The jokes write themselves, folks. Mail them in on a postcard.
There are more than 300 women who are professional ball kickers and don't currently choose to be stay-at-home housewives. It would be delightful if one of them cost the Kansas City Chiefs kicker his job. That is Peter Ham writing a special to the Kansas City Star.
Is he inferring there are no moms in the NWSL?
Yeah, basically.
I think he's mistaken.
Well, he's saying stay-at-home housewives, I guess.
Oh, well.
But once again, that's not what Harrison Butker said. That's not what Harrison Butker said. True. Not at all. Oh, man, you just can't make this. It's good humor for us here. It's great fodder as we roll till 9 o'clock on a Monday morning on KCMO 95.7. But it's also so pathetic that these people actually think like this, and then the Kansas City Star says, sure, we'll publish that for you. Come on in. You know what? If I'm the Chiefs front office, I would stop all interviews with the Star. They're a joke anyway. they're more irrelevant than ever in their history. Just cancel them. Screw them. It's the kind of stuff they're going to write. Please take a hike.